Welcome to Kindergarten Bible Stories and Bible Study Guide. In the contents of this book, we will learn about service. Service means helping others. About grace. Grace means belonging to God. And community. Community means caring for one another. Basic needs of children. All children have certain basic needs as well as needs that are specific to their age and stage of development. The basic needs of children are physical, food, warmth, shelter, mental, power to make choices and follow plans, emotional, a sense of belonging, approval and recognition, expressions of unconditional love and acceptance, freedom within defined boundaries, humor, a chance to laugh, spiritual need, an all-knowing, loving, caring God, forgiveness of wrongs and a chance to start over, assurance of acceptance with God, experience in prayer, answers to prayer, a chance to grow in grace and in the knowledge of God. The kindergarten child. Physical. Start developing large muscle coordination. Lack a sure sense of balance. Are extremely active. Tire easily but soon revive after resting. Lack of fine muscle coordination. Are curious and like to explore their environment, learn by exploring. Mental. Are capable of limited listening and understanding without the help of visual cue, such as seeing the object being discussed. Have quick memory. Memorize things they don't understand. Emotional. Cry easily. Are capable of verbalizing emotional responses. Learn to delay gratification of needs without losing equilibrium. Experience the full spectrum of negative emotions. Learn ways to express negative emotions. Social relational. Are self-centered, the world revolves around them. Play alone in the presence of their friends rather than playing with their friends. Like to make friends and be with friends. This kindergarten book is best for 3 to 5 age. However, the development of children varies from child to child. Therefore, a knowledge of a child in your Sabbath school is important. Generally, the description below is true of children ages 3 to 5. Lesson 1. Hanna's special baby. Have you ever felt really sad about something? So sad that you cried? That's how Hanna felt. It's time to get ready for a trip. The tabernacle at Shiloh. Elkanah may have said to his wife Hanna one morning, "It's almost time for the feast." Hanna smiled. "I'll pack everything we will need," she may have replied. Each year, Hanna and Elkanah traveled to Shiloh to worship at the tabernacle there. But every time they went to Shiloh, Hanna felt a bit sad. Hanna may have thought back to the early days of their marriage and how much she wanted children. But years have gone by, and Hanna had not had any babies. Oh, how much she and Elkanah would love to have a baby. Finally, Elkanah and Hanna began their journey. The road was crowded with other families, and it seemed as if every family had children. How Hanna wished she had a child. Memory Bible verse. May God grant you what you have asked of him. 1 Samuel 1:17. The message: we serve God when we help others. At Shiloh, they worshipped in the tabernacle. When it was time for the special feast meal, Elkanah gave Hanna an extra serving. He wanted to make up for the child she didn't have. Hanna closed her eyes tightly, but little tears leaked out. Hanna, Elkanah said, don't be sad because you have no children. Isn't having me better than having 10 sons? He teased. After the meal, Hanna slipped away to the tabernacle. Oh Lord, she prayed, if you give me a son, I would give him back to you. He would serve you all his life. Eli, an old priest, watched Hanna closely. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. The old priest was sure she had been drinking wine. What are you doing coming in here drunk? He demanded. Hanna was shocked. I am not drunk, she exclaimed. I was just pouring out my problem to the Lord. Eli's frown disappeared. In that case, cheer up, he smiled. May the God of Israel give you what you asked for. Hanna suddenly felt her great cloud of sadness disappear. She looked peaceful as she went back to Elkanah. Eli had prayed that God would give her what she asked for. Hanna just knew God was going to answer her prayer for a son, and that made her very happy. Hannah's gift to God. Lesson 2. Memory verse. For his whole life he will be given to the Lord. 1 Samuel 1:28. The message: we serve God when we help God's leaders. Have you ever wondered about people who help at church? You can help too. Hanna and her husband Elkanah had been to the tabernacle at Shiloh to worship the Lord. And Hanna had prayed for a baby. Old priest Eli had asked God to give her what she had prayed for. Hanna was so happy, and it wasn't very long before everybody knew why. Everyone could see that Hanna was going to have a baby. And then, one day, Hanna's baby boy was born. Hanna may have looked at her beautiful boy, dark, curly hair and his cute little ears. She probably touched his soft skin and counted his tiny toes. Hanna named her baby Samuel because the name means heard of God. She had asked God for a son, and he had heard her. The next year, when it was time to go worship the Lord at Shiloh again, Elkanah went, but Hanna stayed home. I will wait until the baby can feed himself, she said to her husband. Then I will take him to the tabernacle, and he will stay there and serve the Lord. So when Samuel grew old enough to eat regular food, Hanna took him to the tabernacle, just as she had promised. Do you remember, she asked Eli, I stood here and prayed to the Lord for a son. He gave me this beautiful boy, and now I'm giving him back to the Lord. My boy will belong to the Lord all his life. Little Samuel looked up at priest Eli. He was not afraid to stay at the tabernacle with him, even though he was still a little boy. He could help God's leader, priest Eli. Hanna missed her boy very much. Now she looked forward all year to going to worship at the tabernacle. Every year Hanna took a new coat to Samuel. And every year priest Eli would bless Hanna and Elkanah. "May the Lord give you more children," Eli said. God did bless Hanna and her husband in these years that followed. God gave them more than she had asked for, 3 more sons and 2 daughters. They lived at home with their mother and father. But little Samuel lived at the tabernacle and helped priest Eli. Hanna missed little Samuel, but she kept her promise to God. She had given her son to the Lord to be priest Eli's helper. She would see him only once a year, when the family went to Shiloh again. But that was all right, because she loved the Lord and she was happy to have Samuel serve him. Samuel was happy to help priest Eli. Samuel was happy to help God. For his whole life he will be given to the Lord. 1 Samuel 1:28. Lesson 3. Ears to hear. References: 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. Memory verse: Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 9. The message: we serve God when we listen to his voice. When someone calls you to come, do you go quickly, or do you move slowly, or not at all? Little Samuel heard someone calling him. What do you think he did? Eli, the old priest, slept peacefully in his bed. The boy Samuel slept soundly nearby. "Samuel, Samuel," the Lord spoke. Samuel opened his eyes. Had someone called him? He hurried to Eli's bedside. "Here I am," Samuel said, entering Eli's darkened room. "You called me." Eli opened his eyes. "I didn't call you," he said sleepily. "Go back to bed." Samuel did as he was told and quickly fell asleep again. "Samuel, Samuel," the Lord called again. Samuel's eye popped open. He hopped out of bed. That surely must be Eli calling him. He hurried to Eli's room. "Here I am," he said. "You called me." Eli opened his eyes again. "I didn't call," he whispered. "Go back to bed." Samuel walked slowly out of Eli's room. Someone had called him. If it wasn't Eli, who could it be? Samuel did not recognize the Lord's voice because he had never heard it before. Samuel lay back down. Very soon, he was sound asleep again. "Samuel, Samuel," the Lord said a third time. Samuel opened his eyes. Once more, he hurried to Eli. "Here I am." "You called me," he said. Suddenly, Eli knew who was calling the boy. "Go back to bed," Eli said. "If he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" Samuel's heart may have begun to beat faster. Could it really be the Lord speaking to him? Why? Why would the Lord call his name? Samuel went back to bed. But this time he probably lay there with his eyes wide open. He waited. He listened. "Samuel, Samuel," the Lord called again. And Samuel answered, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Samuel, even though he was still a child, would listen to the Lord. Samuel truly wanted to be his helper. God wants you to listen to him today. He wants you to be his helper too. You listen to him when you listen to his words from the Bible. You listen to him when you learn your memory verse. Listen carefully to God's words. when you read the Bible, they will help you to be His helper every day. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. 1 Samuel 3:9. Listen for Samuel's service. References: 1 Samuel chapter 7. What will you be when you grow up? Will you be a leader like Samuel? Memory verse: Samuel continued as Israel's leader all the days of his life. 1 Samuel chapter 7 verse 15. The message: I will serve God all my life. God's people, the Israelites, had started worshiping the idols of their neighbors, the Philistines. One of these idols was Baal, the Philistine god of thunder and rain. Many Israelites had little idols of Baal in their houses. God sent Samuel to talk to the people. Remember, the name Israel means ruled by God, he began. Turn back to God with all your hearts. Throw away your idols. Give yourself to God and serve Him only. The people of Israel listened to Samuel. They broke all their idols and began to worship God again. Come meet at Mizpah, Samuel told the people. I will pray for the Lord for you there. So the people gathered at Mizpah. We have sinned against the Lord, they admitted. We are sorry. We are really, really sorry. The Philistines heard that the Israelites had gone to Mizpah. Let's go attack them, they said. So the Philistines' rulers gathered their soldiers and marched towards Mizpah. The Philistines are coming. The Philistines are coming. A young man may have shouted as he ran up the dusty road. The Israelites looked at one another with wide eyes. Ask the Lord to save us from the Philistines, they begged Samuel. Samuel prayed for the safety of the Israelites. Suddenly, there was the sound of loud thunder from heaven. It echoed from the mountains. It shook the air. It rumbled, rolled, and boomed. The Philistines were frightened. They dropped their swords and spears, and they ran away as fast as they could go. The Philistines thought their god Baal was the god of thunder, so the true God used thunder to show that only he had power, and an idol did not. Samuel put a large rock for a monument on the road to Mizpah. He wanted the people of Israel to always remember how the true God has saved them. For years to come, children would ask, "Why is that big rock there?" And the parents would tell their children the wonderful story. Samuel led Israel for the rest of his life. He served the Lord all of his days. Do you want to serve the Lord too? How can you serve Him today? Samuel continued as Israel leader all the days of his life. Lesson 5. References 1 Kings chapter 17, verse from 1 to 6. Birds to the rescue. When you're hungry, who feeds you? God fed Elijah in a special way. King Ahab, the king of God's own special people, was worshipping idols. God watched King Ahab bow his head in front of the idol Baal. Bring us lots of rain, O Baal. King Ahab prayed to the idol. Give us rain so our food will grow in the fields, and we will have plenty to eat. King Ahab prayed to the idol Baal every day. He even built a temple for the idol Baal so everybody could worship him, and many people did. Was there anyone left who wasn't worshiping Baal? Was there anyone left who really loved God? Was there anyone God could use to tell his special people to return to worshiping the true God? Yes, there was. Elijah and several others. Memory verse. My God will meet all your needs. Philippians chapter 4, verse 19. My God will meet all your needs. The message: God loves us and gives us everything we need. So God spoke to Elijah. God gave Elijah a very important message from King Ahab. Elijah walked quickly into King Ahab's palace. Elijah spoke loudly. My God says there will be no dew or rain for the next few years unless I say so. Before King Ahab could think of anything to say, Elijah hurried out of the palace. Where should I go now? Elijah thought. King Ahab is going to be very angry. God spoke to Elijah again. Go to the east and hide by Kerith Brook, he said. God knew that King Ahab would try to kill Elijah. Drink fresh water from the brook, God continued, and I will send ravens to feed you. Elijah hurried to Kerith Brook. He sat on the ground and thought about all that had happened. Just as the sun began to disappear behind the mountains, Elijah heard birds calling. Caw, caw, caw. Big black birds swooped down. The ravens dropped the food they were carrying on a rock near Elijah. Then they quickly flew away. Elijah watched the birds disappear. Amazing, he thought. When God said he was going to send ravens to take care of me, he meant it. Elijah bowed his head and thanked God. He sat on the rock and picked up his supper. Then he looked at the sky in the directions the ravens had flown. God had kept his promise. God always keeps his promises. My God will meet all your needs. Philippians 4:19. Lesson 6. Miracle oil. Memory verse. He is our God and we are under his care. Psalm 95:7. Paige sat on the porch, ready to bite into her last cookie. Her friend Julie came running over. Oh, what should Paige do? When Elijah was hungry, someone shared with him. Elijah had been camping at the little brook for a long time, but the water no longer splashed merrily along. There had been no rain, and the water in the little brook was almost gone. Elijah studied the clear blue sky, not a rain cloud on his side. Elijah knew why. God's special people were still praying to Baal for rain. God wanted them to understand that he was the one who sent rain, not an idol. It would not rain until God said so. Suddenly, God spoke to Elijah. Go to the village of Zarephath, he said. A widow woman there will feed you. A widow is a woman whose husband has died. Elijah quickly started down the dusty road to Zarephath. God uses others to love and care for us. Let's repeat the Bible memory verse together. He is our God, and we are under His care. Psalm 95:7. When Elijah reached the village gates, he saw a woman gathering small sticks. Elijah was hot and thirsty from his long walk. "Would you please bring me a cup of water?" he asked the woman. "And please bring me a little bread too." The woman turned to Elijah. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't have any bread in my house. I have only a handful of flour and a little oil. I'm going home to make a fire with these few sticks. I will cook one last meal for my son and me. Then we will die because we will have nothing left to eat." Elijah smiled at the woman. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Go ahead and cook the meal, but first make me a little loaf of bread. God promises that there will always be plenty of flour and oil in your containers, and you will not run out of food until He sends the rain again and new food begins to grow." The widow woman believed the words of the Lord, so she did as Elijah asked. She went home and began to cook. Elijah sat and sipped his water as the woman made a little loaf of bread for him. He watched as she measured the right amount of oil and flour. He saw her mix them together to make bread dough. Soon he could smell the bread as it slowly baked. What a treat it was to have good, fresh bread again. For more than 3 years, there was no rain, and nothing could grow, but the widow's flour and oil never ran out. God had provided food and water in the past, and He would provide it now for Elijah and for the kind widow and her son. He is our God, and we are under His care. Psalm 95, verse 7. Lesson 7. The boy is alive. 1 King, chapter 17, verse 17 to 24. Memory verse. The Lord cares for those who trust in Him. Nahum, chapter 1, verse 7. The message. God will always give the best answer to our prayers. Do you remember ever being really sick? So sick that you thought you might never get well? That happened to the widow's son. Elijah stayed in Zarephath where God had sent him. God had not sent rain for a long time because the people still worshipped the idol Baal. Without rain, the crops did not grow, and people everywhere were very hungry. But there was always food in the widow's house, just as the Lord had promised. Every day when the widow looked into her jar, she found enough flour to make bread. Every day when she looked into her jar, she found enough oil too. Every day God kept His promise. One morning, the widow's son may have whispered to his mother, "I don't feel good, Mother. I hurt all over." The mother probably held her son and rocked him. She gave him cool water to drink. She sang songs to him. But he didn't get well. He got worse, and then he died. The widow woman cried and cried. Tears ran down her face as she told Elijah what had happened. "Give me your son," Elijah said. He carried the boy upstairs to the room the widow had given Elijah. He laid the boy on the bed. Then Elijah cried to the Lord, "Why has this happened to the kind woman who is sharing her home with me? O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." 3 times Elijah prayed this prayer. The Lord did not answer Elijah with words. He did not answer Elijah's question about why the widow woman's son had died. But after the 3rd prayer, the boy began to breathe again. He came back to life. Elijah shouted with joy. He picked up the boy and rushed down the stairs. "Your son is alive," he shouted. "Your son is alive." The widow grabbed her boy in a big hug. She was so happy. She laughed and cried at the same time. Then she looked up at Elijah through her tears. "Now I know that you are a man of God," she said. "God truly speaks through you. God speaks to us through other people too. Sometimes He gives the answers to our prayers through others. God cares for us. He will always give the best answer to our prayers." The Lord cares for those who trust in Him. Nahum 1:7. Lesson 8. Up, up, and away. Memory verse. God gives power and strength to His people. Message. God gives us power. Do you want to go to heaven? What do you want to see there? What do you want to do? The Bible tells us that Elijah was taken to heaven. Elijah woke up. A beautiful smile spread over his face. Today was the day. Today was his last day on earth. God has told him so. Today, God would take him to heaven. Elijah and his special helper talked. "I'm going to Bethel to visit the school of the prophets." Elijah said, "You stay here." But Elisha also knew that this was Elijah's last day on earth. "I will never leave you," Elisha exclaimed. "I will go with you." Elijah and Elisha started on their journey. Elijah visited many of his friends that day. He told them goodbye. Late that afternoon, God told Elijah to cross over the Jordan River. The river was deep and there was no bridge. Elijah stopped on the riverbank and took off his cloak. He rolled it up and hit the water with it. The water divided and there was a dry path for Elijah and Elisha to walk across. "What can I do for you before the Lord takes me away?" Elijah asked his friend. "I want to carry on your work," Elisha said. "I want to help from the Lord. I want Him to give me His power like He gave it to you. If you see me when I'm taken away, you will have what you are asking for," Elijah answered. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a chariot of fire appeared, pulled by horses of fire. The chariot drove right between the two men. Then Elijah was lifted up into the chariot and quickly carried to heaven by a strong wind called a whirlwind. Elijah dropped his cloak as the chariot took him up. Elisha picked it up and held it close. He looked up into the sky. He looked as hard as he could, but the chariot of fire and the horses of fire and his friend Elijah had all disappeared. Elisha walked back to the Jordan River. He stopped and rolled up Elijah's cloak, just as Elijah had, and he struck the water with it. The water of the river divided. Elisha walked back across the Jordan River on dry land. Now he was sure that he would carry on Elijah's work. Elisha knew that God had given him power. He would serve God just as Elijah had. For all of his days, he was God's servant, and he used the power God gave him to help others. God will give you power too, power to obey Him and to do good all the days of your life. God gives power and strength to His people. Psalm 68:35.